And next up at UFC 326, we've got Gregory Rodrigues taking on Brunno Ferreira. Carlos, who you got in this one?
I'm going to go with Brunno Ferreira in this one. And it's not because of what he did in his last fight. It's because of how he was able to get there. And it's just the fact that Ferreira likes to move a lot. He's never in one position all the time. And Robocop's just a little stiff. You know what I mean? He keeps his range with his strike and likes to stay long. But if you like to stay long against a guy that likes to bounce around, um, you got to find your range at some point, and the only way to do that is to cut off the ring. And unless Rodriguez learns to cut off the ring, I don't know how he's going to find that range. And then when it gets to the ground, I just think Fajeda is just too quick for him to get in there and get him on the ground. So, do I think it's going to be another stoppage like that? I don't think so, but I do think that Fajeda just being busier, it's probably going to squeak out the decision again. Not squeak it out. I think he's going to get a decision. I just think it's a little difficult for someone like Rodriguez to keep someone like Fajeda in one spot and go to work. I think that's where the problem is, and I don't think he has an answer for that yet.
I'm surprised. I'm not going to lie. I'm going with RoboCop here. Give me Gregory Rodrigues. I love some dissension. I like to get the two opinions of both fighters. I think Ferreira's a good fighter. Don't get me wrong. Obviously good on the ground, has power in the right hand, but I think Gregory Rodrigues is going to be far too big here. We know the grappling pedigree of RoboCop, a guy that's obviously very credentialed on the ground, big for the weight class as well at 185. I want to know what he fights at after his weight cut, because he's got to be in the plus. He looks like he's about 225 pounds. The guy is huge, and I think that he's just going to be able to smother Ferreira. He's going to be too big for him. Obviously, the height in terms of the 5-inch, the height discrepancy here doesn't really favor too much in the reach, but I think Rodriguez is just going to be too big. He's going to always walk down his opponents. He's a guy that has a really tight, heavy guard, and he wants to be able to walk you down and really just pressure you and back you up against the fence. And I just think Ferreira doesn't have a whole lot other than that overhand right to really kind of get the respect of Rodriguez. And to me, if he wants to mix in the grappling, I think he can definitely kind of muscle him to the mat and beat him up there on the ground early. You saw as well with Rodriguez when he fought Cannonier, he was able to really land the power shot, and I think he's very live for a knockout early, and Ferreira's just going to struggle with that. If the fight gets dragged later into this one, I definitely think that Ferreira is going to be live. Obviously, we know with Rodriguez that he tends to slow as fights go on. He's trying to kind of pace himself a little bit. We saw that in his previous fight that, obviously going to decision. But I like that he's kind of taking that on board. That says to me that he's not going all gas, no breaks in fights now. And I think that he can come out here, be a little bit more measured and ultimately find a finish. And I think that he knows now that he can, trust his gas tank to be able to at least fight 3 rounds comfortably. And obviously, I think on the ground, he's probably the better all-out jiu-jitsu practitioner. And I think in terms of the size discrepancy along with the power, he's going to have the advantage there. And I just think it's going to be one of these fights where, Ferreira, dancing around on the outside doesn't suit him. He's going to be having to avoid some big shots from a very large gentleman in terms of Gregory Rodriguez. And ultimately, I think that's a recipe for disaster. And he's not going to take those shots well, and he's not going to be able to gain the respect unless he clips RoboCop late in this one. So give me RoboCop to get this one done.